It's Dr. Minette Riordan here in my cozy pajamas because it is quite chilly here in Loveland, Colorado. Welcome if you are returning, and welcome if you are brand new to my channel. Delighted to see you here. Painting in your PJs with me, Dr. Minette Riordan, is all about art as a creative process, practice, and really powerful tool for introspection and personal exploration. And one of the things that I'm passionate about and is going to play into my conversation today is helping women in midlife reconnect to purpose and to really understand their calling and to understand the difference between work and purpose and calling and vocation. We sort of toss all these different words around, but what do they mean? And I'm going to do this through the lens of a really cool gratitude prompt. So all month long on November, I am working through our 2023 gratitude prompt journal. And the prompt I chose for today is write about a book, quote, or piece of wisdom that has positively impacted your journey. Good morning, my friend. Write about a book, quote, or piece of wisdom that has positively impacted your journey. And on last night's live, I was thinking about the author Elizabeth Gilbert and Big Magic. And I sat down this morning to sort of gather my thoughts and get prepared. And this quote popped into my head that has been with me since about 2007, I think. And there's a reason why that particular moment in time, this quote came into my life, and I'll share more about that on the journey. But I wanted to say good morning, welcome. I'm delighted you're here. I'm going to do a mixed media abstract page and then put a quote on top of that. So I will be using let me share my screen here. I will be using some handmade stamps. I've got some bits of collage fodder, most of them left over from last night's intuitive collage project. I picked a palette. It may change or grow, but this one felt inviting this morning. I've got my beloved quinacridone magenta, some cadmium yellow deep hue. I love this sort of orangey yellow, and I've been really digging this dark phthalo blue lately. So I think I'm going to play with that blue. I've got some water. I have a variety of brushes and scrapers. I've got some makeup sponges here. I have this lovely piece of really soft rag watercolor paper that I got on Amazon for a project that I was teaching in person. And then I also use these in the journals for the Sisterhood of the Traveling Journal, which is my newest collaboration that's coming out on Friday. Oh my gosh, that's tomorrow already. I'm super excited about that. So I think the quote is going to go on a separate piece of paper so I can just have fun, create a crazy background. Haha, good morning, Blanca. And use this paper for the quote. So I think that's where I'm going. I also pulled out my woodies. I love these Stabilo water soluble. Hi, Mary. Water soluble crayons, and I always forget to use them. So I pulled those out this morning to maybe have a little play with as well. And I have some stencils, some makeup sponges. I have a glue stick just in case. I do have some brushes, checking to make sure. I'm working on a very large painting right now, and it is all the way over on the other side of the studio, so my supplies are sort of fragmented at the moment. I have a copy of Walden by Henry David Thoreau. Good morning, Yvonne, which is really fun for tearing up and using for collage fodder as well. And then I have my scraper and my catalyst wedge. These are great for laying down collage materials. And I have some matte medium. I'm going to be working with matte medium. Last night, I only worked with the glue stick because I wasn't planning to paint over it. But today I'm going to use collage just as that base layer. And I haven't done my journaling yet. I've been sitting here in contemplation, and I spent a bunch of time working on my big painting this morning and thinking about what I wanted to share. And I'm going to start with some collage, but I'm also feeling like I need to stick some scrap paper underneath the edges here so I don't glue all my pages together. And I don't always start with collage because I really like kind of a really flat surface, and yet this is, I think, what drew me because I had so much fun with the intuitive collage last night that I felt like I wanted to start differently than I normally would this morning. And so I'm just going to get a few bits of paper and collage. So the prompt for today is write about a quote, a book. I think it's on this page. Write about a quote, a book, a quote, or a piece of wisdom that has positively impacted your journey. And I don't know about you, for me, there are so many books, quotes, and pieces of wisdom that have deeply, deeply impacted me. And when I thought about how do I pick one this morning, I just kind of let myself pause for a moment, get really quiet, and let the quote come to me. And I think sometimes when we try to overthink our answers to prompts like this, we can get caught up in too much thinking instead of just trusting that usually the first answer, actually almost always that first answer is the best answer. So the quote that popped into my head this morning is one that I share a lot. I definitely especially shared it a lot when I was doing my business coaching work. And yet it's come to be equally important in my work with women and purpose and helping them on that journey of self-discovery in midlife and beyond. And my very first coaching certification was way back in 2006, and I became a certified parent coach after a very rigorous academic year-long program. And at the time, I was also running my parenting magazine, which I owned for a decade in the Dallas, Texas area. Cleaning up some of these bits of paper, I get really overwhelmed if there's too many little bits of paper floating around on my desk. So I have to pause and clean up just a little bit. All right, I'm happy to be using up some more of these jelly print pages that I talked about on last night's episode as well, so that I can have an excuse to make some more. So it was a very interesting, challenging time in our lives. Our kids were getting a little bit older. I was starting to look towards what was next. I was about 5 years into my journey as a publisher, and there were so many amazing things that came out of that journey, and yet it was a very challenging business as well. And my husband really wanted to move back to Vancouver. I think part of him is still mad that we didn't all those years ago. And when I thought about moving away from the Dallas area and what would I do next, I started looking around for ideas. I knew I didn't want to go back to teaching full time, and I had just started to hear about this brand new field called coaching. And so I did a bunch of exploration, and I always feel like my life works in pretty miraculous ways, that I'm always being led down a particular path that's perfect in the moment for whatever direction I'm going and what it is that I need. And I stumbled across this parent coaching certification. I stumbled across a couple of them. At the time, parenting was my life. It was what I knew. It was what I was working on. And it made sense. And I thought, okay, this is something I can do from anywhere. So I went through this whole certification, and then, very long story, we decided not to move. I really wasn't ready to give up on my publishing company at the moment. Okay, I think that's enough collage bits. I kind of like the colors. Interestingly, the colors kind of coordinate with a palette I picked, even though I didn't intend that. And so I went through this year-long coaching certification, and I've been through several others since then. I have been coaching people since 2006 in different topics and directions. And after I completed the certification, I stayed in close contact with the founder of that program, a absolutely amazing woman, and she became such an inspiring mentor to me. In fact, we wrote a book together a number of years later. It's still available for sale on Amazon. It's a book all about healing and repairing your relationships, called From Fizzle to Sizzle. And after I completed the program, she reached out to me and she said, "Hey, I had this guy that was teaching marketing to my new coaches." And I really appreciated how she not only ran this amazing coaching certification, but she really helped to set her students up for success by teaching them how to actually build a business. And she reached out to me and asked if I would teach the marketing portion of the program to the incoming class. And I said, yes, of course I would. That sounds amazing and right up my alley. So at the time, my whole life was about marketing and sales. That was what I did for a living. I was selling advertising for my magazine. And so in order to do that, this is a long story, so bear with me as I'm gluing pieces of paper down. And I went back and listened to all the recordings of the guy who had taught the class previously. I think his name was Mike, something like that. And it was a really, really great class. And even though knew a lot about marketing, I learned a lot also from what he taught. But in the course of his class, he shared this quote by Frederick Buechner. If you know me and have been around in my community for a while, you've probably heard me say this quote before. And I'm starting with glue stick, and then I'm going to put a layer of matte medium over the whole top of this, but I wanted to be able to have a little flexibility and move some of these pieces down a little bit first. And he was talking about, so when you're in business, one of the things that's really important is that you understand who your audience is, what you might call your avatar or your ideal clients. And he was talking about how to sort of focus in on that in your messaging. And he shared this quote, and it kind of stopped me in my tracks for a minute, really made me think, and it's continued to come back to me over and over again. So again, that was, almost 20 years ago, 2007, where are we? 20, almost 20, we're almost at 2024. Holy cannoli. So 15 years. Math is not my strong suit. And the quote stopped me in my tracks, and it's rare for me to remember. I consume so much content and information all the time. So I pay attention when something really sticks with me across time. I need some more little bits down here. And I know by now you're like, okay, Minette, what is the quote? I'm probably driving you crazy with my long rambling story. So Frederick Buechner was a minister. He's written quite a few books. And the quote says, "The place that God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness meets the world's deep hunger." The place that God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness meets the world's deep hunger. And I love this quote because I think it really helps us understand differently how to think about the work that we do in the world, whether that's career, volunteerism, raising a family, leading communities, that there has to be a match between what feels important to me, what I'm passionate about taking a stand for, and what the world needs. Let's see. And so that quote has stayed with me all of these years. And then as I went on to continue to study and do some work, and at one point my congregation that I belong to in Santa Barbara sent me off to do this beautiful training based on the work of Parker Palmer. This is really pretty. And Parker Palmer talks and writes a lot about vocation. And so people often say to me, I don't know what my purpose is, or I don't know what's next. And I think sometimes we're looking for the wrong thing. I think sometimes what we need to be focused on and paying attention to is our vocation. Another word for vocation is calling. And that's what brings me back over and over again to that beautiful quote from Frederick Buechner: the place that God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness meets the world's deep hunger. And so as I was thinking about quotes that have had such an impact, that one occurred to me and occurs to me again and again and again. And the thing that that resonates the most with me is remembering that for me, that has changed over and over and over again, depending on sort of the circumstances and the things that I'm focused on in my life. Good morning, Gail. And so when I think about what my deep gladness is today, it's not the same as my deep gladness was 15 years ago when I first heard that quote. It's evolved and changed. And yet, if I look really closely, and I'm just taking some of these water-soluble markers here and just making some marks on the page, just kind of making a mess. These are going to all sort of get smeared around in a minute when I add the matte medium. But if I look at the through line of the last 2 decades of my life and my career, there's a few things, and we all have this isn't just me, but there's the thing that stays the same. It might be your values. It might be a belief system. It might be a commitment to a cause. And it might be an activity or a way of being in the world. So for me, creativity is a through line throughout my whole life that has gotten expressed in so many different ways. Teaching is another through line that has, started when I was quite young. Public speaking I've been doing since I was in high school. I've gotten a lot better at it than I was back then. I used to get so nervous, but I still did it. And so when I look at the through lines, the things that bring me, in Frederick Buechner's words, that deep gladness, the topic maybe has changed from parenting to business, now to midlife and purpose. But how I do it and why I do it has stayed the same. I have always, since I was a young woman, even before I knew what I wanted to study, been passionate about listening and supporting others, about creating ways for others to live their best life. And I have done that in so many different ways. But it's helpful when we can find those threads and through lines in our own life. There's a sense of affirmation and an acknowledgement that I'm not lost. I know where I am. The form and the particular expression may be shifting, but for the most part, we just forget. We forget to connect the dots. And that's why I am so in love with my program, Your Midlife Renaissance, and registration is open just for this week for Your Midlife Renaissance, because it helps people connect the dots. It can be really challenging to connect the dots on our own, and it's important that we reach out and ask for support. It doesn't have to be from me, it can be from others, and I have lots of great free resources to help people on that journey. But sometimes investing in ourselves and our own personal growth is the best way to get there faster, to not feel lost and adrift, or to feel like we're the only one on the journey. So community, building communities, I've been doing that since university. I've been hosting big conferences and events since way back in my university days, because community and belonging are two themes that are through lines in my life. So I'd be curious, as you're just listening to my story, is there a book, a quote, or a piece of wisdom that really stands out for you? I'd love for you to share it in the comments, or if you're catching the replay, type replay and share what's that piece of wisdom, book, or quote that has really supported you. And then what are some of those through lines in your own life? What are some of those through lines in your own life? I'm going to get this nice and dry before I come in to add the paint. All right, so I'm going to get some paint down on this now, and I'm just going to have some fun. This is going to be a bit of just a mixed media mess. Excuse me. And I picked 3 colors. Oh, there's a pretty little piece of washi tape that was floating around. We'll just stick that in there too. Why not? There have been so many life-changing books that I have read. The Power of Full Engagement, The Power of Habit, The Untethered Soul, all of Brene Brown's books. And I can think about pieces of advice and wisdom that I've received over the years. So I'd love to hear from others. Has there been a book, a quote, a poem that has stuck with you across time? A Bible verse? I'm just randomly putting color down on the page. So most of this is going to get completely covered up. Let me see if I can, trying to shuffle that light just a little bit so maybe we don't have quite so much glare. We get so much glare when there is wet paint on here. Clean off my brush before I put down that yellow, although I'm going to let some of these mix together and see what kind of other colors we can get on here. And for me, this is such a fun way to begin an art journal page that I don't want to have to think too much about. I want to just be able to get some color down. Trying to get some of that yellow on there without mixing all the other colors in there. And this is one big happy messy page, isn't it? My husband must be mixing something in the kitchen. I can hear him stirring. So I can still see bits and pieces of that collage back there. I can also take my catalyst wedge needs to get clean. You can see the texture that it's creating. It's got a little too much paint on it. And I can even push some of this back. I can take a baby wipe and push some back if I want to maybe bring some of the marks and color back as well. But this feels really dark, so I'm going to get this super dry, and then I'm going to come over the whole thing with a layer of gesso, I think, and I'm going to cover it all up because that's my favorite thing to do. You guys know that. And I don't want it to be all the way dry. I'm okay if I get a little paint mixed in to the middle. You guys are super, super quiet today. Are you still here with me live? Are you working away over there? Quote, a poem, a book, a Bible verse. What has stuck with you across a lifetime? Maybe you got tired of my story and stopped listening. It's all good. That was a very long-winded story. Okay, so I wonder where my brayer. Okay, I was using my brayer constantly and it got washed and probably taken to the other side of the studio. So let me find, I have a bag of old used up gift cards because I want a nice clean edge. Aw, Yvonne, you're sweet. Thank you. Maybe there was a mentor along the way that gave you a piece of advice. And I don't know why that made me remember. I'm going to grab my other journal here. Made me think about my first job after I got my master's. I worked for a publishing company, a textbook publishing company, and helped write Spanish language textbooks, or helped to edit, not write, but to edit Spanish language textbooks. And I remember the day I went to be interviewed, and the gentleman that I interviewed with told me I was overqualified for the job. And I thought that was the silliest thing I'd ever heard, because I knew a lot about Spanish language, but I knew nothing about publishing. And I stayed there and worked at that job until I left to go off to Stanford for graduate school, for more graduate school. Oh, I want this stencil. And so it was one of those, it wasn't a piece of wisdom so much as it was what does that mean? I don't believe that. And I don't want to hear that because it assumes that I don't have space or opportunity for growth and learning. And that still sticks with me that he said that. And it was a great job. I had a lot of fun. I worked with a really wonderful, wonderful community. I still have a gorgeous pair of earrings that they gifted me when I left. I think I was there about a year. And it was such a great first job. Awesome. Thanks, Gail. Judy watching and listening, working on a zentangle project. Beautiful. So yeah, I love how this page is coming together here. Art is a secret weapon to restore all, oh, God's secret weapon to restore all things back to beauty. And artists are God's fierce army. That is absolutely beautiful, Blanca. Thanks for correcting the typo. I knew it was missing something there. That's beautiful. Art is God's secret weapon to restore all things back to beauty, and artists are God's fierce army. I love that. And I'm really loving this page. So even though I have covered up so much of the collage, the color that was underneath, you can still see edges of the painting. You can still see bits of the color here. And I don't have any wipes here either. I'm thinking I want to maybe even smooth this out a little bit more, and maybe it doesn't even matter because ultimately it's going to have this piece of paper with the quote in the center, maybe like that. So now I think I'm going to come in and add some stenciling just to get some marks and patterns on here, and maybe I'm going to do some of these nice. So these are zentangle patterns that I used a ballpoint pen. I use a ballpoint pen to scratch into fun foam, and then I just stuck that fun foam, it's sticky backed fun foam, adhesive fun foam, to a thin piece of cardboard to create my own hand-drawn stamps. I do remind me of your name, Matriarch Astrology. I know you told me before, but please tell me again, and then I will remember. And I love Neurographica. I have not studied it. I have done it. For me, Zentangle is in some ways my form of Neurographica, but I do love that process. Almost went for the certification on that one, but I have enough creative habits and tools that I didn't need another one, but I do absolutely love that process. I love bilateral drawing as well. There are so many great tools to relax our minds. The other thing, I have a online membership called Sacred Circles, and it is a membership where we use coloring mandalas, what we call sacred circles, as a tool for mindfulness and relaxation. So I have a big arsenal full of Ileana. That's right, such a gorgeous name. How could I forget that one? Ileana. All right, so let's see if we can just get, so this is kind of a reverse, these are reverse stencils, right? So when I put this down, I'm going to have a lot of black and then see that blue underneath, and we'll see if maybe it's too much black. No, that's interesting. It's going to create some nice contrast on the page. So I'm probably going to want to maybe do that in a couple of different spaces. And I really like these windy curly ones here in the center. When Neurographica first got popular here, I definitely went through a phase of doing a whole bunch of it. West Side Story, that's a great one. I love that, Gail. There's a place for us, and I added a place for all of us. Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. All right. So again, building up layers. Leslie, I did not see. Did I miss something from you? Let me see. Ah, there it is. I think it just moved so fast that it went, it got hidden on my screen. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, I think the feed was just moving too fast, Leslie, and I missed that one when I was looking down. That's a gorgeous one. Thank you. Awesome. Blanca, thank you for the reference to that. Yeah, these are great. I would absolutely do a page with that one, Leslie, also, right? That is such a powerful one for sure. Great quotes. I love having more quotes in my own arsenal. So you guys are giving me all kinds of lovely, lovely, lovely things today. So these are maybe a little bit more black than I wanted on here. Oops. Okay. So sometimes what I've noticed is these get worn out and I have to go back over the grooves again. So I will work on that later. I want to do this one, and let's get some white down on the page. Bring some of those brights back again. And you might recognize this one from the sunflower painting. This was one I used on the You might be thinking, Gail, about bilateral drawing, right? Is the one where you're not looking. Neurographica, you draw definitely an abstract scribble, but then there is a really cool process for what you do with the art and the lines that's really relaxing and healing. Okay, that is feeling better. And that's a great one too, Eliana. I am who I am, and that is enough, right? Like the simplicity of that. Okay, I like those, that little star in there. I like this little flower too, and I almost feel like I want some more of those, but maybe in a different color. Okay, I'm starting to see kind of a path and a flow. There's some great YouTube videos on Neurographica. And Eliana, do you have a favorite resource, or is that something that you teach people or show people how to do? It is definitely a very calming and soothing practice. Okay, this is feeling better. It's starting to brighten back up a little bit again. And I'm going to come back here and start to make some decisions about putting that quote. So I definitely feel like it needs a little more color again. And this almost feels like these wavy lines, there's some flow and some water. That's interesting. Just pausing to think. It feels like it needs some more yellow on here. I want to brighten this up. I want this piece to be a bright piece. Yeah, it is super, super helpful. So I follow a woman on Instagram who is one of the teachers that brought it to the United States. I think it originally came from Germany, and she has some great how-to videos. So if you just do a search on YouTube for Neurographica, you'll find some great examples. So Kelly Wynn, the artist Kelly Wynn from Kelly Wynn Studios, designed this super cute set of stencils for my friend Andrea Shebelu at a Work of Heart studio. And Andrea sells them in her online store. But I love the playfulness and the simplicity of these patterns. There's suns and clouds and circles and X's, and I love these rainbows. There's a couple more floating around. My favorites kind of always seem to rise to the top a little bit. Okay, let's get a little bit yellow. Yeah, also check out bilateral drawing is very calming for your brain. So bilateral drawing is where you Let's see. Which one was that? So bilateral drawing is where you get a piece of paper, you use both hands. There we go. Your left and your right, and you draw on the page with both hands at the same time. And there's science that shows how this just sort of calms your brain down and allows you to come back to center. It actually brings the two halves of your brain back together again. It's another wonderful, wonderful tool for calming. There are so many great tools for using art as a way to calm anxiety and de-stress for sure. All right, so those are making me happy. They could be suns, they could be little underwater sea anemones. I think we need one more up there. And you saw that I put the white paint down first and then came back in with the yellow to make sure that it would pop. All right, this is feeling fun and playful. I'm almost feeling like it needs some green. I wouldn't have thought I was going to add any green to this, and maybe some green leaves. I like how this swirl is kind of happened here at the bottom. Can bring this back again. I don't have to worry too much about that center of the page because it's going to get covered up with this quote. Yeah, it needs just a little something something, but it's feeling really close. So let me add just a tiny bit of this gorgeous phthalo blue to that bright yellow. So I could have just grabbed a tube of yellow, but one of the things about learning to mix your own paints, it's kind of like finding your own calling and vocation. It's the thing that's original and unique to you. No other person is going to have that same palette, right? That same perspective, that same combination of colors. And this is one of my favorite zentangle patterns, poke leaf. We'll see if it works. All right, so because there's so much color under there, I got the green and I've got the leaves, but you can't quite see them. So let's watch what happens. I'm going to do this one more time, but I'm going to put white down first and then go back over it with the pop of colors. It does to me too, totally, Yvonne, exactly what I was thinking. A wonderful unintended sort of ocean current tide pool kind of feeling. And what I love about that tide pooly feelings is this quote is so much about the tides of my life, right? Like, thank you for saying it out loud because the metaphor is there, right? For me about the tides of my life and how I have been carried and so often buoyed by this powerful quote by Frederick Buechner. So if we brighten that up, there we go. So then we have a little more, I don't want that hard edge, so I'm just gonna, and I could go over that one more time with a darker green, but I don't think that I need to. Yeah, something about that green just brightened it up, and I think I'll pull a little bit more of that green down here, and then I'm going to bring some of that leafy pattern up there also, so I don't have that green just in one place, right? I want to make sure that my eye is moving around the page in a few different places. Oh, it's so many of us share that story, Eliana, right? About just being criticized or not feeling that our art was good enough. And I'm so glad that you found your way back. I was probably also in my early to mid 30s when I started to really bring art back to the center of my life. So about that same age. And I had been told by, multiple teachers that I shouldn't waste my time in art classes. And it was never my major, it was always just that thing that brought me so much joy. The thing that has brought me the most success creatively in my career has been my writing. And I got all kinds of scholarships and grants and different things from writing. So it took a while for me to really honor the part of me that is a visual artist. Okay, I want to clean this stamp off. I'm going to just do it on this envelope here, which has this really pretty goldfish stamp that'll get used in something. But I want to get some of the extra paint out of the groove so that I can use this one time. And I got some words falling out of that. There we go. So I want this one to be a little darker green, so I'm going to come back in here, see if there's enough of that. I might have to mix up some more of that darker green. A little bit darker. Okay. Now I'm going to want to just have some of that. Oops, I'm like my envelope is flinging words at me. When I picked it up, all kinds of things came flowing out of the envelope. So let's get those back in this word envelope. So when I'm flipping through magazines and I'm focused on images, and if I see a phrase or a headline, I will also cut them out and keep them in little word envelopes like this one. Tiniest little bit of blue, that's probably too much. The other reason that rather than just grabbing a tube of green, I'm mixing my own color here is because I'm using the same blue and yellow that I've used other places on the page, which means the greens instantly harmonize with what's on the page. They don't feel all of a sudden like they're out of place. They feel like they're in the perfect place. Yeah, just needed those some little pops of green in a few different places. Almost as a little frame here, right? And you can see all of a sudden by just adding those little bits of green and the multiple places where there's the yellow, there's this flow around the edges of the page that start to bring the whole piece together in a different way. And where's a rag? Let me grab a rag here. So sometimes I look and I go, oh, that's too much. I don't want that, that much color. And of course, and normally I would just do this with a baby wipe because I love the way baby wipes push color around on the page. And I'll take that back off. But a damp paper towel or a damp rag will work. I try to use rags most of the time so that I'm not putting so much paper into the landfill, and I just have a bunch of old ratty dish towels that aren't nice enough for the kitchen anymore. All right, now it's just about sort of, some playful fine tuning of things. Where does it feel like it needs, a few more just pops of color, or I want to bring back a little depth. Little bit more of that yellow. Fingers are also great for creating those sheer transparent layers. And I'm going to take my time with the quote, so I'm not going to add the quote yet. So one thing I'm noticing is this piece of paper isn't quite square, and that's bugging me a little bit. So I might take a ruler and square it up just a little bit so that it neatens it up. And I'm thinking I'm probably going to want to add maybe a zentangle border and then that Frederick Buechner quote that I shared, which was the place that God calls you is the place where your deep gladness meets the world's deep hunger. And one of the other things that I always remember from that marketing class that the guy shared that I thought was such a great metaphor and reminder was that because we were talking about, audience and sales and like really gathering your tribe and your community and finding who those people are. And he said, you can't sell hamburgers to a crowd of vegetarians. And that's another one that has really stuck with me over time because it's so true and so hilarious. Like, doesn't matter how much advertising and marketing you throw at it or, how charismatic and convincing you try to be, you can't sell hamburgers, beef burgers to a crowd of vegetarians, right? And so I think about that when we're trying to convince others of our opinions or our ways of being in the world, we need to make sure that we're finding those like-minded people. I wanted to bring some of that dark blue back, even though I know I'm going to be covering up this center. So I'm liking this piece. So one of the things I want to do is take a photograph of this that I can print out and use for collage paper for another piece because I think this would make some really cool collage paper. I'm also noticing that I've lost my magenta in here. So I'm just looking at where can I add just some tiny little pops of color, and do I want to do that with paint? I don't think I have a light pink in here, but I don't have a nice dark pink. Like a little oil pastel would be great. Those are also on the other side of the studio, so I'll just come in with maybe a few little tiny marks here. Bring back that original palette. Don't need a lot of it. There's already some up here. I love getting my fingers into a piece. Again, it's this gratitude art journal. It's all about like bringing me into focus with myself, right? Bringing me into focus with myself. Okay, that feels better. It feels like we've got some of all of the colors. I would also take a picture of this and really look at the contrast. Like I have some nice blacks here and blacks here. I think some of these colors are going to create some nice contrast up there as well. All right, that's making me pretty happy. I really like this one little flower, and I'm wondering if maybe I might come in and hand draw with a white posca a few more of those flowers over the top of everything. And this needs to get completely dry before I touch it with my poscas. And I've lost a little bit of the whiteness here. So I'm going to see if I can just over push back, or if not, I might bring that stamp back, or again bring a white posca in. I thought I saw one sitting here. There it is. Okay, that's way too wet for the posca, but I love in Zentangle, this is a zinger, and I love this Zentangle pattern. So I might come in here and just, I'm being impatient and not letting the paint dry, but it feels like it just needs a little more of that sort of hand-drawn look, those final marks and details that make things look fun and playful. So I think that's going to be the touch, but again, I need this to definitely get a little dry and let that just be scribbly and messy. It feels really close to done, but not 100% done. And I have another call in 3 minutes. Thankfully, I'm just going to show up for that one in my pajamas too, because I can. And this one is done for now. So the next time I go live, today is Thursday already. So on Tuesday, I will show the finished project. I'll share on my YouTube channel a photo of that finished project as well. But super, super happy with this hour of playful creativity and thinking about how this is a place of deep gladness for me, right? Like this being here live with you, or if you're watching the replay, thank you. But this is a place where my deep gladness gets to have a voice. Thank you all so much for joining me, and I'll see you all next week, Tuesday morning, 7 a.m. Mountain Time, for another live episode of Painting in Your PJs with Minette. And Blanca, I have many quotes like that I like and love because they have shaped me. Yeah, right? It's amazing when we think about how much these things have shaped us, or we can express gratitude to the people that introduced us to those quotes as well. Have a beautiful rest of your day, my friends, and I'll see you guys all next week. Bye bye.